Welcome to the Birding for Joy podcast, a show about discovering and exploring all the ways birding and wild birds bring joy into our lives. I'm Candi Lynn Fite, your gracious host and joyful birder. If you're curious about learning more about birding for joy, grab your favorite beverage, settle on your perch, and let's get into today's episode. Hello, birdiful friends. If you've listened to Birding for Joy before, welcome back. If this is your first time tuning in, I am so happy you're here. I encourage you to go back and listen to earlier episodes of Season 1 and 2 so that you can get a feel for what Birding for Joy is all about. In today's episode, I'm taking a detour from our usual joyful birding topics to talk about something that's become a serious concern of mine: conservation, ecology, and biodiversity. These are topics that I have been avoiding on the podcast for a while. Actually, I've mentioned these topics in a few episodes, but because I didn't want to lose listeners, I tiptoed around them so I didn't ruffle anyone's feathers. Because the main theme here on the show centers around discovering joy through watching, listening, and learning about wild birds, I have, for the most part, tried to keep Birding for Joy's tone upbeat. My goal with the podcast is to share the joys of birding with others. Like my daily prescription meds and my supplements, not a single day goes by when I haven't ventured outside and received my dose of bird joy. Birds and the act of birding make me happier, healthier, and more mindful. They help bring out the best version of me, and they ask nothing in return. Wild birds are not a "what have you done for me lately" species, like my bossy Chihuahua, who whines for me to hold him, barks at me to feed him at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m., yips for his 1 p.m. and 8 p.m. pup snack, and demands to be let out multiple times a day so that he can soak up the sun rays on his favorite rug outside. Yes, I am quite aware that I have created a tiny tan terrorist. And despite our codependent relationship, he does bring me immense joy. But back to the point of today's episode. This will be part 1 of a 2-part series where we will focus on conservation and ecology concerning wild birds. After chatting with Pamela Lowell and reading her book, My Summer with Ospreys, and now listening to Trish O'Kane's Birding to Change the World, it has become increasingly apparent to me that this topic is important. It needs to be talked about, and there needs to be change. In many ways, I already understood the importance of conservation, and I already do some things to help. But I can do more, and I can encourage others to do more. Maybe someone or two will listen. With this podcast, I have a voice, and it is time that I spoke up. Becoming a birder has changed me. It has opened my eyes and my mind. The birds have taught me to become acutely aware of the environment, habitat, the importance of biodiversity and conservation. And unlike anything or anyone out there discussing the ramifications of the climate change, the wild birds are showing me that the threat is real. It is happening and will continue to happen until we humans change our ways. Whether you believe in climate change or think it's just a bunch of malarkey, it's difficult to deny or argue that the climate is shifting, changing, and not in a positive way. One only has to look to nature to see the negative impacts the unstable environment is having on our planet. The proof is not in the pudding, but in nature. The flora and fauna, the waters, the ground upon which we walk, and the air which we breathe. I am not a doomsdayer. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not easily swayed by the opinions of others, but I am an observer. I'm a reader, a researcher, and in a perpetual state of learning. I pay close attention to details. I'm extremely sensitive. I am keenly aware of my surroundings. I consider myself instinctive and intuitive, and everything in my gut is telling me things must change. Because humans are major contributors to the problem and we have the capabilities of rectifying the situation, it is up to us to create change. It is up to us to make this right. Overall, Mother Nature is showing us that she's in trouble. But for the sake of this podcast, let's focus on the wild birds and what they're showing us. Birds make an excellent indicator species to reflect the health of the environment for several reasons. Primarily because birds are found in almost every ecosystem on Earth, but also because they are easy to observe and count. Scientists have already done extensive research on them, and we understand how they relate to their environments. Combine these with the fact that the birds help signal pollution, habitat loss and recovery, and the outbreak of diseases, it is safe to say birds are important in environmental science and human health. According to the Lab of Ornithology, the State of Birds report last done in 2022 reports that many North American bird species in every type of habitat except the wetlands have decreased in numbers due to habitat loss, environmental degradation, among other global threats. The report also identifies 70 tipping point species that have lost half or more of their breeding population since 1970, and these species are on track to lose another half or more in the next 50 years. I read on the American Bird Conservancy website that we have lost more than a quarter of our bird life since 1970. And this is based on scientific evidence from not just one source, but collective research from 7 different institutions. The evidence proves our wild birds are in trouble. A side note before we move on. If you are also concerned about other wildlife, the bunnies, bees, butterflies, chipmunks, turtles, etc., I'm with you. Habitat loss affects all creatures. So, if we set out to improve the biodiversity in our areas, all wildlife will benefit. The concern for habitat loss and how it affects wildlife began last summer when I took my last evening forest walk on my in-laws' property to see Chauncey, the fledgling barred owl. That weekend, the bulldozer and tractor were busy back there cutting and clearing. Of course, it's not my land, so I couldn't say anything. But when I went out Monday evening, after all the commotion was over, Chauncey did not fly out to greet me at the forest edge, as he had done for nearly 3 months. After a week, I stopped looking for him. Since then, I have done a lot of birding. I have seen a lot more destructive habitat loss. I have done a lot of research on conservation, ecology, and how to create change to help make a difference. I have also suffered from paralyzing eco-anxiety, where I'm just walking around with my head down, my heart stuck in my throat, and trying like hell not to sink to the ground and give up. But I know I am not alone. I may not be able to convince my neighbors to quit clearing the forest, but there are others out there who feel the same way I do. They know the benefits of biodiverse ecosystems. They understand the consequences of habitat loss, fragmentation, and degradation. So if you are feeling overwhelmed or concerned by environmental issues, I get you. I see you. And there is hope. Because together, we can make a difference. As Wendell Berry so eloquently says, to cherish what remains of the earth and to foster its renewal is our only legitimate hope for survival. Let's discuss how you and I can create change, become environmental stewards, and make a difference in this ever-changing world. The first thing is reducing our anxiety about what is happening. We need to unfreeze. We can't accomplish anything if we're paralyzed by our fear of what is happening around us. It's okay to feel the fear, acknowledge it, and to understand it, but we cannot let it keep us down. We can't allow it to hold us back. We must face it and then take a step forward. Next, let's recognize that it's okay to not be okay. Eco-anxiety and climate anxiety, frustration, they can take their toll on our mental health. Show yourself compassion and grace. Absolutely nothing good comes from punishing yourself for not acting sooner or doing more. What counts is that you're ready now. Your decision and commitment to act are in the works. It's crucial to understand that you're not alone. Locate your people. Not everyone, possibly even a family member or friend, will agree with your views on these issues. And that's okay, because there are folks out there who get you. They understand how you're feeling because they too have either been there or they are there now. Remember last week when Pamela Lowell told us about the climate cafes? If you're feeling alone, that will be a great place to start. I will drop a link to the climate cafes in the show notes. You could also join a local conservation group. Volunteering not only feels good, but it's also a fantastic resource to learn about the environmental concerns in your area. Okay, so this is a biggie and not as easy as it sounds. Take a break from climate change news, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed. I know for myself, staying tuned in for too long when I'm already stressed over the situation only worsens my distress. At times like this, I like to take a walk, go birding, plant something, read some fiction, watch a rom-com, or catch up with a friend over coffee or wine. The point is to unplug for just a while. Recognize that big change takes time. Start small, such as changes in your own yard. If this feels too overwhelming, start smaller, such as making a list of things that you want to do or want to change, and then tackle one item at a time. The key is realizing that you can't do it all in one day, and even the smallest acts of change count toward progress. Remember to reward yourself. Yay, I added a bird bath and a native plant in the yard today. The final thing I'll add today is empowerment and action. What lights you up enough to act? This is going to be different for everyone. And remember, we can't do it all. So pick your superpower and then decide your actions. For birders, our concerns and actions will differ from those concerned about, say, the chemicals and pesticides that end up in our water systems. I'll use myself as an example. As a birder and an overall lover of nature, I appreciate the joy they bring to my life. But I'm worried about habitat loss and extremely concerned about their survival. To help, I plan on creating a biodiverse habitat in my yard to better serve the wildlife in my area. Then, I plan on sharing my knowledge and inspiring others so that they too can support wildlife by creating biodiverse habitats in their locations. Well, friends, I know this is a heavy subject, but it's one that I feel needs to be addressed, especially for those who find joy in nature. Even though it felt like I was rambling on today, and I did get a little choked up back there, I hope that you were able to gain something useful or maybe inspiring. Join me next Thursday for part 2, when we'll take a closer look at what it takes to create a biodiverse habitat for the wild birds, including sources I'm learning from and online resources to explore for your own regions. Until then, I wish you well and lots of joyful birding, my friends. If you are enjoying the Birding for Joy podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to the show. Subscribing and tuning in to the episodes lets the algorithm on each platform know the podcast is providing you worthwhile content. It also helps ensure the success of the show. Remember, the absolute best way to support your favorite podcast is by word of mouth. So make sure to share Birding for Joy with others who might enjoy listening. That way we continue to build a joyful birding community. As always, thank you for tuning in and stay chirpy, my friends.